when I met Colonel Andy Milburn was I said, Colonel, what is it that defines freedom? Like, what is freedom? And he thought for a minute. He really is a person of precise communication. He said, I think what we have in the Constitution, the ability to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. It's not more, it's not less. It doesn't mean that you have the freedom from challenge of being offended. It doesn't mean that you have freedom from the challenge of being disrespected, but it means you have the ability to pursue your life, your liberty, and your happiness. And with this man who has an incredible career of distinction, keeping and protecting our freedom in the United States military, he was born originally in the UK, immigrated to this country, joined the Marines as a private after graduating from law school, and he retired with honor and distinction. And then he created the Mozart Group, which is a group that does incredible things in the world in service of people. And what he's decided would be a fun hobby in his second career post-retirement from the United States military, where he served as a colonel, is he's decided he'll just head on over to the Ukraine and step into this situation, because what he taught me, and I'm going to ask him if this is an accurate rendition of things, is while the U.S. has given much in this situation in aid in the hundreds of billions of dollars, some of it is not the optimal things to be giving. So we have one leakage point, which is, are we giving the optimal things, the things that are truly the most needed? The second question is, are we giving, is it making it to the people who need it most? Are the things we're giving getting to the right people? And the third leakage, which the answer is no to a meaningful extent, not no completely, but no to a meaningful extent. The third piece is question of whether or not the people who are receiving it. So let's say it's the right thing, it gets to the right people, or gets to people who need it. The third question is in leakage is, do they know how to use it, optimize it? Do they have the skill set to take that equipment now in their hands, or the medical supplies, and to do the things necessary? And what Colonel Milburn, his incredible team, I thought when I had breakfast with him and the people working with him, I thought I was having a meeting with the Expendables, which is a super fun movie. Comes less fun when you realize it's based on like real life, Bruce Willis and others with the Expendables. And I felt like I was with this remarkable group of skilled, selfless human beings bordering on lunacy for how selfless they're being in what they're doing to serve a people whose life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness has been disrupted in massive ways. The day we met, the first night I had dinner with Colonel Milburn, we had sirens going off in Lviv. In Lviv, you kind of felt like nothing was even happening really, and sirens went off of missile alerts. Colonel Milburn did not miss a move in his dinner, did not flinch, and I don't flinch much. And I'm looking at Rob Gill, and he's looking at me like, should we do something? Should we keep eating dinner? And the next day, we go to Kyiv, and in Kyiv, there was the first missile strikes that occurred in and around Kyiv in like 3 or 4 weeks. And again, we had brick oven pizza and some vanilla and mango soft serve ice cream on that day in Kyiv, as incredible heroes like him and even the people of Kyiv are operating like nothing's happening, right? And so, Colonel Milburn, thank you for being here. Thank you for everything that you do. And have I at least somewhat accurately introduced you, and anything you'd like to add to your introduction, sir?
Sean, you've been more than generous, and guys, great pleasure to be here. I in advance if I'm cutting in and out. I'm in a vehicle right now. We're in Donbass region of Ukraine, as you guys probably know, is in the east, where the fighting is right now. Sean, I made the mistake of tuning in when I was hungry, and so I got the tail end of your talk about meatballs, and made me quite homesick. But I wish I'd caught the first part of that. And I know I've got limited time, everyone. So I'll kind of cut to the chase here. Sean is 100% on target. When it really comes down to it, the greatest need that we can focus on, is simply training. And it's training across the board, from self-preservation skills, first aid, how to save each other's lives, but also, how to fight the enemy. I mean, let's be honest, they're defending their homes and their families. If some of you are thinking, well, that's great, but that's not, I'm an American, that's not potentially American national interest of us, all of us who are motivated to be here. I'm sorry, am I cutting in and out?
You did a little bit. You said, and if somebody thought, Colonel, you said somebody thought, well, I'm American, that's over there, and you cut out for about 10 seconds.
Yeah, someone might say, hey, this is not, the defense of Ukraine isn't a primary U.S. interest. And for us, it's really, it's not about Russia and Ukraine so much as it is about kind of the global ethical balance, global rule of law, what should be allowed to stand and what cannot. And I don't think that's too, I don't think that's too esoteric, because all of us believe in that, and that's why we're here. Sean, just to build on what you said, the one thing that is not in the news right now, because the news cycle moves on, right? It's Ukraine's not a primary story as it was in the early days of the war, but arguably this is a much more dangerous time. The Ukrainians are really hard pressed in the east. They are pushing every single man into the front line, trained or untrained. The territorial defense units around Lviv, where you were Sean on that first night, they too now are fighting in the east. And our job in the Mozart group, one of our jobs, primary job, is training these guys. We've got 5 days to train the average unit, take them from never having fired a weapon before to, actually going into combat against the Russians. And that is anyone, you can imagine, even anyone who has not been in the military, that's a very short period of time. Our guys do it very well. They do it to the best of anyone's ability, but it is still a tragically short period of time. I do believe, and I do, I know without being able to prove it, that we are saving lives here. It's very clearly evident in the gratitude that we receive from Ukrainian soldiers. The other thing, though, we're doing, this is why I'm in the Donbass now, is we've got a team here extracting civilians from frontline towns being shelled by Russian artillery. And we started that yesterday. We got on the ground just day before yesterday, and we did our first operations yesterday, going into towns to pull out civilians wanting to leave, elderly, kids, a couple of families, and those who didn't want to leave. And you can understand that people have lived there all their lives. They're now in the 70s or 80s. A lot of them, frankly, are numbed by the kind of day after day of shelling. I mean, it really is intense, and clearly civilian areas have just been demolished. Every single building. We came across a number of elderly people who have been living in the cellars and just didn't want to leave. And so, we left them with food and water and the assurance that we would come back to check on them, which we do intend to do. And we're also have agreed to assist Ukrainian military transporting their casualties. Right now, they've got a beat up Volkswagen van that they're loading their casualties into from the front line, and that they run the gauntlet of Russian artillery back to the nearest hospital. So we have a couple of vans. We've got combat medics that we said we will assist them treating casualties on the spot and getting them to the nearest hospital. Sean, and everyone, I'll pause there. I just want to make sure that I haven't cut out completely. Did you hear most of that?
We heard every single word very clearly, and Colonel, thank you for that. Two quick final questions and points. One, we live in an interesting world today where we either believe everything we hear or we believe nothing we hear, depending upon the source. And the folks here, these are very beautifully open-minded people who think differently, successful entrepreneurs, building business, heart-centered, and are very in alignment. These are people that are, in our, Unblinded elite and mastery programs. This isn't open to the general public. These are people here with a unified way of thinking in a neutral, discerning sort of way, just arming them with factual, with reality, with truth, facts. Sometimes people hear about civilian casualties and things and think it's Ukrainian propaganda. It's not true. It's exaggerated. Can you just share a little bit about what you know to be true from being literally in these areas, from Bucha to Irpin to being in the east? What types of things do you know, Colonel, have occurred against civilians?
Yeah, absolutely. So yesterday, Sean, we're in a town that literally was 500 meters from Russian, the Russian military, and it was under constant bombardment. No exaggeration. I have never seen destruction like that. Every single building badly damaged. We estimated that a rocket or a missile or an artillery shell must have landed in that town every 10 square meters, over the course of the last couple of weeks. Absolutely, the damage was destruction was it was breathtaking. The Orthodox Church there, even that had been destroyed, and the population who remained were living literally underground. Well, we were there too. It wasn't. I'm not pretending we were under the fire itself, but artillery rounds were coming in to the town. There were Russian drones overhead. We had to go undercover with our vehicle a couple of times to avoid them. And then perhaps the most frightening piece, the Russians started firing 40 millimeter grenades into the town. It's like a machine gun that just fires grenades. You can imagine it's, think about how fast the machine gun fires and think that instead of bullets, it's firing grenades. That's what an AGS-17 does. And we thought we must be hearing things. We thought there's no way the Russians are so close, but they were clearly identifiable as a civilian town. There was some military in there, but the Russians were shooting all over the town. It's almost as though, there are armies that typically do not perhaps take much trouble to avoid inflicting civilian casualties, right? But the Russian army here is going beyond that. They're actually targeting civilians. There's no doubt about it. There were vehicles that had been carrying civilians up and down the street that had been shot up. And
you did cut out right now, Colonel, for a few seconds, and
even ambulance. To your point, Sean, I was just saying, to your point, because the media is not allowed on the front line here, a lot of the reporting is not taking place about what is happening there. And I've got photographs of what has been done to this town. Clearly a civilian town, clearly no military targets in that town, but the Russians have pulverized it.
Yeah. And then in Bucha, things done to children, women, and were atrocities and murder committed, war crimes. Some people are like, oh, did that really happen? What's your take on whether or not that happened?
Yeah, the extraordinary thing, Sean, is that I've read reports that, not just the Russians claiming that this was fabricated, but also some Western media, which is incredible, not serious media. So I was in Bucha the day after the Russians left, and the bodies were still lying around. Russian soldiers as well as the civilians that they had killed. We talked to the locals, and there's no way. The locals were still in shock. Clearly, they hadn't had time to get together to concoct a story, and they told us that Russians, drunk over a succession of 3 nights, had dragged people from their homes and killed them. In some cases, tortured. Women were raped, and the bodies were there. To me, it was absolutely indisputable. The only Ukrainian military on the ground at the time were a handful of territorial defense forces. there was just simply no time to fabricate a story like that. And where do you produce 350 bodies from? I mean, it's just absurd. But the problem is that there were very few Western media crews at the time who were there on that first day. There was one BBC crew that reported it, and I think that was it. So when the others came in, the bodies were already being buried, and that gave latitude for the Russians to claim that it was all a hoax.
So, Colonel, extraordinary, and to think we're talking to somebody who's literally there as all this is happening, like in the midst of it, and the difference between being in Kyiv. How far is Kyiv from where you are, Colonel? About 100 miles, or no? Like to the considerably more. More. Okay.
I'm going to ask my expert here, Yuri. How far is the Nets from Kyiv?
So for cross,
300 miles.
It's about 200 miles. Well, 220.
Yeah, 220, 250 miles from Kyiv.
Well,
yeah.
We'll send our best again to Yuri. It was a pleasure to spend time with him as well.
Okay. Yeah, he's here. He's my driver right now. He does much more than that.
All over the place. Unbelievable. So Colonel, for folks that we want to help, what is needed most are financial resources. We met folks, and I've had a little bit of exhaustion with investing time and energy in causes that are not doing the things they say they're doing. These people are doing the things they say they're doing. I'm staking that. I met people who were there, who were volunteering at this point with the Colonel, who have jobs waiting for them at home, have families waiting for them at home, young children, and these folks need something to be able to survive and take care of their family as they train and do the things. And so financial resources are a desperately invaluable need of the Mozart Group at this point. So, Colonel, if folks want to support, want to help, want to do the things, and P.S. Chris and I are raising money this weekend on his stage, and I'm honored to do that on Saturday. And I will share beautiful things about your work and what's happening. But if folks here want to take it to their communities, their worlds, and even contribute themselves, what would be the best way to connect and to do something? Like what would happen from here? Who should they talk to? What should they click, do?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Absolutely. So what I'll do, Sean, is I'll send you the two choices for donating. One goes via a 501c3, so it is tax exempt, and the other choice goes directly to the Mozart Group, because we do training, which includes training in weapons. We are not by ourselves eligible for a 501c3. However, legally, we do have two 501c3s that channel money to us directly. So it's quite easy. I'll just provide both options. And here's what the money goes to. Okay, so there is absolutely, you can't imagine an organization with fewer overheads. So we beg, borrow, and we don't steal, but beg and borrow apartments, bargain with landlords. We get great deals on vehicles. We buy used, et cetera, et cetera. So bottom line is, in terms of what money gets, $90,000 trains an entire Ukrainian battalion. I mean, trains from kids who are showing up, never having fired a weapon, to where they can feel confident enough that they are hitting targets. Battalion's about 650 guys. So that is, I mean, it's hard to, that I can tell you in terms, that's what it does. That's, that supports the trainers. They're not, no one's getting rich here, but it keeps them, it keeps the current team in place, keeps their families happy. They're wondering why they're in Ukraine and not earning money elsewhere. But most of all, yeah, that's, quantifiable, and that is not, that's not hip shooting. I mean, from my point of view, we have the training piece down to a science. We don't buy equipment. The only equipment we buy are vehicles. the equipment that we provide them, things like first aid kits, uniform items, gloves, protective eyeglasses. We don't purchase. We work deals. We get donations in order to get those in the hands of the guys who need them. So the money goes directly to the training, because training, as I've pointed out, is the greatest need, and no amount of equipment can make up for lack of training. And we honestly, and I think, hopefully you'd agree with this, Sean, there's no other more credible organization in country that is providing that training. The pedigree of our instructors is second to none. And I think more important, they're driven by the right reasons. We don't have guys over here for the money, of course, otherwise they wouldn't be here. So I hope that answers your question.
100%. And in final, I sat with a gentleman who had his MBA from Berkeley. I've mentioned this a couple of times, that was there to work with the colonel and the group. Guy's got his MBA from Berkeley. He's got a job at McKinsey Group waiting for him. And this dude was so brilliant, impressive, special forces background, and representative of the people that are there, because it's with that specialized, and this is sometimes I think hard for people to truly appreciate, but under the 80-20 rule, and you take its standard deviations, it is a tiny fraction of a percentage of people that make the most extraordinary of differences, right? 80-20 taking out to multiple standard deviations is 0.8%, creates more than 40% of the output. And the colonel and his crew, that's who they are. I mean, these are the people that are the difference makers there. So if you're thinking about freedom, protecting people under siege, if this is not your cup of tea, understood. I couldn't thank the colonel for being here enough, and what he is doing. This is lever 6 contribution all over the place. It's also exemplary of what he's saying. Training, development, teaching is vital for people to be able to do what they need to do to create the outcome. In this case, the outcome the colonel believes, I align with him on it, is a stand for freedom.